Parliament TV on DSTV channel 408. As indicated to you yesterday, and of course as we started our broadcast a few minutes ago, we will be having a number of conversations, obviously with members of Parliament who participated in yesterday's debate, as well as those who will be participating in the debate at 2 o'clock this afternoon. I do now have the pleasure of being joined by the youngest president in the history of our country in terms of parties represented in Parliament, and that is, of course, the Honourable Zungula. He is the president of the African Transformation Movement, and he is, of course, here to talk to us not only about the issues that were raised in his speech during the debate yesterday, but of course to raise some other critical issues that the party views as quite pertinent for transformation in the country. Honourable Zungula, thank you so much for making the time this morning, and welcome to the platform. Wonderful. Just by way of introducing our conversation, talk to us firstly about the importance of oversight and accountability and how you view your role as a member of Parliament in ensuring that through oversight the country can move forward and the lives of ordinary South Africans can be positively changed.
Yeah, I think most importantly, you know, the Constitution designates the responsibility of oversight, lawmaking, keeping the executive accountable on Parliament. Therefore, Parliament has got a special role in terms of delivering to the people, because it is a Parliament elected by the people. It is a Parliament of the people supposed to, you know, keep an eye or check over the executive. Therefore, Parliament is critical because the laws that are interpreted by the judiciary come from Parliament. Yes. Also, the actions of the executive in terms of enforcement of those laws, you know, Parliament plays an oversight role. So Parliament is critical to make sure that there are progressive laws in place. At the same time, there's oversight to make sure that the implementation of those laws do meet the needs of the people of our country. Because look, we've got the highest unemployment rate in the world, the crime rates are very high, most unequal country in the world. Therefore, in light of those challenges, Parliament is critical because you can't expect judiciary to transform the country, because the judiciary does not formulate any laws, you know. So, and you can't expect the executive to take it upon themselves. You need Parliament to be the vanguard in terms of making sure that it keeps the executive accountable. So in our view, Parliament must play its role, and at the heart of Parliament, the interests of the MPs must always be La Gogo, who can't read, who can't write, who can't even understand the bigger issues of the economy, because when La Gogo votes, ithemba lakhe likuthi ukuba apho yena angazi khona, we as members of Parliament, we must be able to think simcingele. So it's very critical that members of Parliament, in everything that we do, we must always have in the heart of ukucinga kwethu, must always think about ababantu through their vote, who elect us to be their representatives.
Indeed. So let's quickly talk about what happened in the House last week, Thursday, when the President was about to give his address to the nation. And I also want to quickly contextualize, before you give me your response, that we had a conversation with the Speaker of the National Assembly that morning. And she was basically saying to the nation, and she was saying to members as well, that obviously the rules are there to enforce decorum in the House, to make sure that that space that obviously is guided by the rules of the House, but of course dignity as well, to ensure that the proceedings of the House can go ahead without any disruptions, but importantly that everybody is respecting and is showing respect, and respect is also then obviously projected from the President as well in terms of how he engages on the platform. But talk to us about what happened in your view. And we know that you are obviously engaging within the ambit of the powers and privileges. Members have the right to say and you know, and engage and speak freely in the House. But in your view, talk to us about what happened on that day.
Yeah, you know, Parliament is a political space. You have 14 different political parties. The attitudes and the approach to politics will be different. However, you've got the rules. The rules now, they bind everyone, including the presiding officer, such as the Speaker. Now, everything that is done in the House, regardless whether a person is a member raising on a point of order, or it is a Speaker that is, you know, presiding over the proceedings, they must use the rules. Now, I raised, you know, was raising on a point of order to cite two things. The first one, Rule 90 prohibits members or prohibits presiding officers from anticipating. The purpose or the purpose of last week, it was basically hearing the state of the nation.
Absolutely.
Therefore, in our view, you have a speaker that will say time for moment of prayer and meditation, and then we are gathered, they give the secretary to read the order of the day, and over to you, Mr. President. But the speaker read rules selectively because she was anticipating whatever conduct. That, in our view, was in contravention of Rule 90. The second one, whenever members were raising a point of order, Speaker interrupted them, and that is in violation of Rule 66, that prohibits any member, including presiding officers, from interrupting members when they are making speeches or when they are addressing any matter. You'll recall that even when I was addressing that Rule 66 that speaks to interruption, she interrupted me as well. But we do understand that it is a political space, such things happen. That is why there's a mechanism, which is a Rules Committee, the Powers and Privileges Committee, to also deal with the conduct of the Speaker whenever we, as members of Parliament, we are not satisfied.
Yeah, but at the same time, looking at the responsibility of the Speaker to ensure that there is decorum in the House, and given the fact that obviously there were already pronouncements made by some parties that they were going to disrupt the proceedings of the House. Obviously, decorum is not only because obviously members are also held to a particular standard in terms of how they conduct themselves in the House. How do parties make the distinction, and of course, without taking away any of the very positive contributions that you've made, the responsibility of parties to make sure that they work together with the presiding officer to ensure that, you know, the proceedings of the House, everybody takes joint responsibility to ensure that whatever is before the House in terms of the business of that particular day, that actually those things actually happen. What responsibility do parties take, and in particular your party as well, in ensuring that there is decorum? Because without decorum, it means that those issues that are critical for transformation, that are critical that the nation was waiting to hear, we had to wait, you know.
Yeah, no, look, firstly, if you talk about the state of the country in terms of the crime levels, unemployment, etc., you know, some of the people, our constituency or the constituents of other parties may be of the view that we can't be living in discomfort, yet you as presidents in the country, as members of Parliament, are going to live in comfort. You are going to come to SONA and everything will be comfortable, whereas majority of the citizens are living in discomfort. Now, what needs to happen from the side of all 400 MPs, it is the issue of principle. When I was raising that point of order, remember, the other members, they were raising a point of order on the president based on what they viewed that the president should not be addressing the House. Now, I saw what the Speaker was doing wrong, because the biggest problem, Sibu, that we face is that some of the members, there's no principle per se, in the sense that if the Speaker ill-treats me, they'll keep quiet. It's only when the Speaker ill-treats a member of their own party that they'll start speaking out. When I was raising a point of order, I was raising a point of order based on the ill-treatment the Speaker was granting members of a party that is different from mine. So what I would encourage members of Parliament is that let us be principled. Let us address you know, the issues of misconduct, regardless whether it is a person from your party or from another party.
Just before we move away from this issue, and of course, I mean, you've already indicated that all the parties that are there, they've got different ideological standpoints, and you're raising an issue of principle in terms of what was happening at that particular point in time. How does that, what other platforms do you then use except for the platform that we have right now to engage parties on issues of principle? And if we're talking about taking joint responsibility for decorum, for enforcing decorum in the House and ensuring that the issues that are before the House, the business of the day, and it's obviously, as you eloquently spoke about oversight, the imperatives of oversight and accountability, then it really is, it's upon that responsibility sits with all members. So what platforms do you then use to ensure that, you know, you're talking about principle, which is very critical? You know, I mean, there has to be a common understanding about the conduct of members. And of course, if we're looking at, for example, those members had already indicated that they were going to disrupt. That was a common information that is out there. So talk to us about how do you strike the balance between that?
We've got many platforms, your Chief Whips Forums, the Rules Committee, particularly in a session whereby all 400 members of parliament are there, in my view, that is the perfect time to actually state your case and actually express your opinions as to why is principle important and why members of parliament must stand up, because, you know, members can't be happy because it's not one of their members that was unlawfully or irrationally chased out of parliament, because it was me on Thursday. Who knows, next week it could be someone else. And where does it take parliament if the fact that when I'm addressing something and the speaker does not agree, the speaker will use an irrational decision and chase me out? You know, where does it take parliament? Because that is akin to intimidation, that is akin to silencing. So if members of parliament are principled, all of them, what's going to happen is that they'll understand that it was Zungula on Thursday, it could be myself tomorrow, and that is going to erode the functions of parliament. And we'll recall that to a certain extent, the issue of oversight and accountability, it is always in the hands of the opposition parties, because opposition parties, you know, the opposition parties, you know, they are not in the executive, whereas the members of the ruling party, to a certain extent, there are political considerations that actually stops them from addressing their political seniors who sit in the executive. Whereas we as opposition parties, you know, we are able to speak frankly, we are able to speak openly on the failures of the executive. Therefore, if members of the opposition are treated in a way that would give rise to suspicion that this is an attempt to silence them, this is an attempt to intimidate them, then, you know, opposition parties must come back and say, this is not right for our democracy, because in a healthy democracy, you need a healthy opposition. You need an opposition that is not intimidated or silenced. Look, in other countries, we hear of opposition members being killed, but it does not start there. It starts by the way they are treated in the House. If they are treated unfairly in the House, chances are that is going to grow. That can develop to something else. So that is why it's important for opposition parties to always come together and think about the principle in terms of ensuring that we live in a healthy democracy.
Honorable Zungula, thank you very much for those insights shared. And of course, that's where we have to leave it for now, but I'm sure there will be plenty of opportunity going forward to unpack some of the other critical issues that are important to the ATM. That was, of course, Honorable Zungula. He is the president of the African Transformation Movement, just sharing his views on issues of principle and, of course, the role of members themselves, including our presiding officers, to make sure that they jointly ensure that there's decorum in the House, so that the issues that are critical for transformation in the country, issues of development, that those issues actually take center stage and are prioritized for discussion in the House. With that said, let's take a look at this rather.